What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to episode 490 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. Little remote setup tonight. So we're live on Twitter and Facebook as well as Twitch like we are every single Wednesday night. So what is going on, everybody? It's KB and Matt coming at you with quite an interesting docket of things to talk about. Micah Parsons seems to be overlooking the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Sixers lit the beam. They won a game against a hot Sacramento team, and a fan-favorite trade deadline acquisition for the Philadelphia Phillies is going back to Los Angeles, and we'll talk about Survivor as well at the end of the show for the true sickos at home as we get set for the finale of Season 43 tonight. But before we get started, make sure you guys are following us on the socials, Twitter and Instagram at UndergroundPHI, Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. It's scrolling on that ticker below if you're watching live. Make sure you guys subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave those 5-star reviews. It really does go a long way for this show to continue growing as we head into year 5, February 2023, right around the corner. And share it with your people. Tell them to subscribe, unsubscribe, and resubscribe. It helps play with the algorithm on audio for some reason. And subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. You get full video episodes, original content, and live streams as well from all your favorite shows on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. And big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen. Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, and the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland. And of course, guys, make sure you go get your merch. It's the number one way to support us here at Underground Sports. PHI Apparel Company is the official home of all of our merch, and there's no doubt when you guys are going to the stadiums, to the bar, Xfinity Live, wherever you may be taking in your favorite sports teams, you're going to stand out in the crowd with the unique designs that PHI Apparel Company is dropping on your heads. Plus, you can rep your favorite Underground Sports podcasts as well. Go to phiapparel.co and use code UNDERGROUND for 10% off any order. I want to give a shout out to Josh. He's an avid fan of OTB. We had our big live stream a couple weeks ago for the NLL opener on stream. Bought 3 shirts from us. So he's rocking Underground Sports Philadelphia and OTB out in Oregon. So we're going countrywide, Matt, with fans of all of our shows. So go to phiapparel.co and get your merch and help support everything we're doing here. But Matt, what is going on, my man?
I'm just living the dream.
Living the dream we are, and the Philadelphia Eagles clinch a playoff spot this past Sunday. First team in the NFL to do it this season. They've got the Chicago Bears on the horizon, and, obviously a big Christmas Eve matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. Jalen Hurts, Jordan Mailata, not worried about the Cowboys right now, though. Great responses because Micah Parsons, even though we adore his Phillies fandom, and appreciate it very much. He just tends to he's been slipping into this quite often, Matt, where he's just been talking quite a bit about things before kind of thinking about it. And he goes on Von Miller's podcast, and a clip gets put out on social media where kind of calls Jalen Hurts a system quarterback. It's more the team than the system, and I just find it funny that, you've got a game ahead of you already against the Jaguars team who's scrappy. We've seen them win games against good teams this year. And the Cowboys almost lost to a 1-win Texans team last week. So Micah Parsons clearly has his priorities, in order. But I think the bigger takeaway from all of this is just the responses from all the Eagles players when asked about it, because that just shows the focus that this team has right now, and their mission is obviously to win the Super Bowl this year, and they have all the capability to do it. and for them to kind of just, say, hey, we're worried about the Bears right now. And it's a 3-10 Bears team, but that's who their priority is right now. And I love that response from these guys. And it just shows like the type of players that they are, where they're just still taking it 1 week at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the exact type of response you want to hear. I just think, yeah, getting like worried about. Also, I think it's weird that so many players in all these sports have their own podcasts now. I think in some ways it's cool, but in some ways it opens you up to this type of
Yeah.
conversation that can kind of blow up on you and put you in a bad spot. If I was like a PR representative for these people, I'd be like, let's not actually do this because I think someone's going to say something really dumb one time that's going to get them in a lot of trouble. Because when you just start having these like very casual conversations, it's very easy to forget that you're on a mic and that this is going to be uploaded for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or
Oh,
millions if you really
like
say
Aaron
something bad.
Rodgers?
Right. Just be aware of that. I think sometimes these guys forget that. Yeah, it's kind of a nothing comment too, because I think everyone has levied these accusations about every quarterback through the course of history. Every quarterback at some point has been a system quarterback. People said the same thing about Tom Brady. That as soon as he left New England, it wasn't going to work. Whatever. Not that Jalen Hurts is Tom Brady, obviously, but it's just a dumb thing to say, especially in a week where you're not playing the Eagles. You know, it would make more sense if in the lead up, because the conversation is sort of naturally around them. But yeah, I think Jordan Mailata said it best too, where it's like, I don't know who you're playing, but we're focused on the Bears. So
We're not
that's
playing
way
the
it should be.
Chicago Micah Parsons.
Right. Although I would like a team full of Micah Parsons, at least on the defensive end, would be very good. That'd be an interesting sight.
And I also like that, like, the Micah Parsons putting this out there now, next week when Christmas Eve rolls around, this is going to be on the bulletin board for the Eagles all week. You're telling me that, Lane Johnson's not going to go out there and take it up, to a 12 instead of a 10 that he normally is, blocking Micah Parsons. Like, I just find it funny that, a Cowboys team that, one, is coming off a very shaky performance against a 1-win team, barely got by, and then you're fighting to stay alive in the division this week against the Jaguars. Like, if the Cowboys lose this week and the Eagles win, the division is essentially over, because at that point the Eagles' lead would increase to 3 games, and then if the Eagles beat them on Christmas Eve, I think the division gets clinched, and then it's kind of all eyes on the 1 seed from there on out, which I think could be clinched the following week. So, like, the Cowboys are in a predicament where they're kind of like, if they want to win the division and want to stay alive for a potential 1 seed, which I don't think they will, they need to win, and to not be focused on the task at hand just kind of shows the type of team that this Cowboys team really is this year, in my opinion. Like, they get talked about by all the talking head pundits week after week, like, oh, the Cowboys have a better opportunity to win the Super Bowl than the Eagles. I mean, nobody knows who's going to be in the Super Bowl yet, obviously, but like, what has told some of these people that the Cowboys have a better opportunity than this Eagles team, other than just stirring social media controversy?
I think you just answered your own question. The Cowboys are a good team, but I do think the Eagles. Every time I've watched them this year, I felt like things are just easier for them than they are for other teams. They make beating up on teams look pretty smooth. This is like a compliment you'd pay of like the Chiefs in years gone by, right? Where it's like, and even at times this year, the Chiefs have been able to do this, but just the cruise control, the speed that they're able to hit against teams is just it's different. And I think defensively too, you could argue the Cowboys defense might be better, but the Eagles are not far behind in that regard either. They're certainly one of the top defenses in the league too. And I just think too, like, the Cowboys to catch up in the division already is very much a long shot. They'd have to win now, and the Eagles would have to have a pretty bad slip up at the end in what is a relatively manageable schedule too. It's not like the Eagles have tons of really challenging opponents left on the docket, and then start to watch Vikings and get happy about them losing, which is always, I think, kind of a win-win type of situation, for that 1 seed. But the Eagles have a real opportunity to make these last few weeks a really comfortable. I mean, you could see it's kind of funny, that the Cowboys could be in a situation too where they can't really drop anymore, but they can't advance anymore, so they could be resting players even, in the final week of the season, or maybe even the last two, because there's nothing there for them to really to win.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the Eagles' schedule the rest of the way. Obviously, you have the Bears this week. You have the Cowboys on Christmas Eve, Saints on New Year's Day, which everybody like that I've been talking to is like, oh, by that game, like the Eagles could be resting starters and everything. I kind of have the complete opposite feeling on that Saints game. Not that we want to look too far ahead, but like that Saints game, if I'm Nick Sirianni, I'm playing everybody because I want to win it because you have the Saints first round pick. You want to make that pick as, high up in the draft as possible, and you have a direct opportunity to, affect that positioning. I think I'd say for at least 3/4, the Eagles starters are playing against the Saints.
Yes. Because also, you don't want to necessarily go 2 weeks without playing. Like there is definitely something to the rhythm. Ask the Phillies if rhythm is a good thing. If baseball fans had their way, the top seed in the NFC would just go straight to the Super Bowl. We would just have right now.
We wouldn't even have the Super Bowl. They would just win.
And you know what? I'm sorry. You know what? Mets fans were right. Eagles should just get the
LA Times writers correct. Just crown the Eagles the champs.
And there we go. Yeah, I just think people have it in mind that you can just like shut this down and restart it very easily. I think the week is a good opportunity to prepare and rest. But anything longer than that, you are running the risk of maybe accumulating a little bit of rust, and maybe too much rest sometimes can really work against you.
And I mean, looking at the Cowboys' remaining schedule too, like, not that it's that different than the Eagles. I think obviously by far and away the Eagles are the toughest team they have remaining, just like the Cowboys are the toughest team the Eagles have remaining. But the Cowboys play the Jaguars in Jacksonville. Then they're home against the Eagles on Christmas Eve. Then they have a short week. December 29th is their next game. Prime time in Tennessee against the Titans. And, like, sure, have the Titans been, typical Titans of the last 3 or 4 years? No, but they're still playing to get into the playoffs. They're still playing for seeding and everything. They're leading that division right now, and they're going to probably have to win that game to kind of secure either the 3 or the 4 seed in the AFC playoffs. So that game's going to be meaningful for both teams. Plus, the Cowboys are on the road there. And Nashville, over the past couple of years, has been a difficult place to play for a lot of teams. And it's a team that the Cowboys, as a whole, since it's an NFC-AFC matchup, they're not necessarily familiar with. And then the Cowboys go to Washington for the final game of the season. I mean, if the Eagles win on Christmas Eve, the division's pretty much wrapped up. But Cowboys are going to be playing for seeding too against the Vikings, and then it's just a matter of like, who do you root for? Who do you want to be the 2 or the 3 seed? When it comes to playoff time, and who do you want to be a wild card that the Eagles could potentially be seeing if they clinch that number 1 seed after the wild card round?
Yeah, but again, the Cowboys are going to be locked into that 5 seed because they're not going to be dropping. I think it'll be very, very funny if on the final day of the season you have a similar situation where the Giants get screwed out of a playoff position again because a team rests a team, and the Cowboys rest some players against the Commanders, and the Commanders get a win that puts them in the playoffs on the final day. I think that would be really, really funny.
Why isn't Dak Prescott on the field?
That's how this all shakes it. Right. That would be hilarious. And it's like, but the Eagles also rest starters that day because they also play on the last day. So it's like, I think there's some real potential there for some good stuff on the final day of the year.
That'd be amazing. And the only reason I say between the Cowboys and Vikings is because the Vikings lost this past weekend to the Lions, and the Lions winning that, there's still opportunity for the Lions to win the NFC North now, which is crazy to think about, seeing where the Lions were, after losing to the Eagles, and now over their last 6 games, the Lions are 5-1, get a win over the Vikings to kind of have a game in hand over them now. And I think if the Lions win out, and their schedule, if I'm not mistaken, is not too crazy, the Lions still have an opportunity to, 1, get into the playoffs and win their division for the first time in God knows how long.
Yeah, they have the Jets, Panthers, Bears, Packers. This could all be moot this weekend when they lose to the Jets because the Jets are a pretty good team, especially defensively. and a lot of those teams would be crushed. Really, I think the Lions. I think just to make the wild card, are going to have to win 3 out of 4.
Hmm.
I do think the division is just a little too long. I cannot see now the Vikings could, but I just cannot see the Vikings melting down completely in that way. And the Vikings have the Colts, Giants, Packers, Bears left. So I suspect they're getting at least one win out of those remaining 4. I'd be surprised if they didn't.
It would be quite hilarious though after a season filled with just like pumping the Vikings tires and claiming that they're this, godsend of a team. They're the first team in NFL history to win more than 10 games in a season, and when they get to that mark, I believe they are 10-3. Yeah, they're the first team to hit double-digit wins in NFL history with a negative score differential.
Yeah, very nice.
Just a nice little tidbit there. And like to put it in perspective, the Lions are a game under 500 and they have a +2 score differential. Like the Vikings are not like this end all be all team, and everyone claimed that the Vikings defense this year was going to be what carried them. It's really been their offense without Dalvin Cook, and I brought this up to Pitts on Monday's episode. The Vikings are essentially they're like great value Buffalo Bills. Like, obviously the Bills have a much better quarterback in Josh Allen, and he can do things that Kirk Cousins can't do, but they both have very elite wide receivers. They both cannot run the ball to save their lives, but the Bills have a much better defense than the Vikings do, and the Vikings defense, I think, is what's going to be their ultimate collapse once the playoffs get here.
Yeah, I think the Vikings too. I mean, anytime Kirk Cousins is in and around the playoffs, I think he's going to be a favorite for people to bet against. And you look at the nature of a lot of their wins this season, and that so many of them have come in one-score games, and those have a lot of high variance. And I just think a little bit more of the pretender than an actual contender for using our first take spin voices there, right? But yeah, I do think they're not a team I take super serious in that regard.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that. Is there any team, from your perspective, that quote-unquote worries you for the Eagles in terms of just matchup?
It's still the 49ers. I know with Brock Purdy that, it's a little harder now for me to imagine, them winning a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy, but I mean, we also saw them just absolutely lay it to the Buccaneers with Brock Purdy. I just
and now Purdy's injured.
That defense really worries me. And I think they are just the type of defense we saw it last year too when they played the Eagles. Could really just eliminate a lot of whatever it is your strength is. They have the ability. They have just great talent and they have great scheme defensively. And I mean offensively too. Brock Purdy. Who knows, but they sure have the weapons to carry that team. Obviously, you're not going to have Debo for the rest of the regular season, but could be back for the playoffs. That's a guy that, again, can make big plays happen. Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Greg Kittle. I don't know. You still have all these guys around. You still have this great talent core. That worries me. And I just think you have good coaching there, too. And, as much as we're pleased with the Eagles this year, they're still unproven in the playoffs. This coaching staff is unproven in the playoffs. You're obviously going to back them because they've looked great this year, but there's something to that. And Cowboys at home wouldn't worries me as much, but I still think that's maybe a tougher matchup than people want to give it credit for. Again, defensively, that could be a tough task. But yeah, I would say really the only team that worries me is the 49ers. I just think defensively, that's a team that I would be happy if they're going home the first weekend. And I think would make me feel very comfortable about the Eagles' chances of getting to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely want to see them gone as quickly as possible. It is going to be interesting to see how they're able to navigate, whether it's the rest of this season, because Purdy now, for this week's game, he's listed as questionable with an injury, so we'll see if he ends up playing. Could be journeyman Josh Johnson at the helm for the 49ers this week, but, they're going to be a team that I think is playing on Wild Card Weekend, and I would love if, somehow, some way, it winds up that, them lacking an actual quarterback who has experience and, that clutch gene in these moments of December and January that somehow, someway, the Seahawks catch fire and take the division away from them, because I'd feel way more comfortable with the Seahawks being the team representing the NFC West than the 49ers.
Don't see that happening,
I
unfortunately.
don't either, unfortunately, but it would be nice.
Right now, it'd be the 49ers and Commanders. I just I don't see our boy Carson helping us out any. I don't see. I
Taylor Heineke is not walking
don't
through that
foresee-
door.
No, I just don't foresee the 49ers necessarily going home the first weekend. But it'd be nice. It would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks sit 2 games back of the 49ers right now. So we'll see what happens with that, especially with just, the question marks surrounding the 49ers quarterback situation. It would also be nice if the Vikings somehow lose the division to the Lions. That'd just be hysterical and just great for the internet. And I mean, somebody's going to have to end up playing the 6-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round in Tampa. So
It is going to be the Cowboys. It's hilarious because for like the last 3 weeks, it's going to be like 2 months where it's like, yeah, we've kind of known that these two were going to play each other, and it feels like they've played each other a decent. Like I think they've opened the regular season against each other the last 2 years. Those games of this year wasn't particularly close, but I remember last year being a close, really exciting game. This year was just a little bit more of a slog, which was a sign of things to come, especially for Tampa Bay. But I mean,
Dak got
I think
hurt
it would
too.
be right. I do think it'd be. I don't know. Like, I just wonder where your head is at if you're Dallas going into Tampa Bay. Let's say Tampa like limps into the playoffs at like 8-9, and you finish whatever. Let's say that they end up with like 11 wins, 12 wins. You have to be feeling pretty good about yourself. That's just not that's a torture chamber for you. Like that's just like a mental hell that I think I don't know that they're totally ready to deal with. It's also Mike McCarthy. This is a guy that I just think we blank out of our mind all the time. Just finds ways to lose in the playoffs year after year. So yeah, I don't know. I just I think Dallas having to go into Tampa would be a very uncomfortable situation for them.
The other crazy part about the NFC South, too, after this weekend, if Carolina wins out, they win the NFC South because they have the tiebreaker over every team in the division.
Yeah, it's firmly in Sam Darnold's hands. I can't wait to see how he. It's going to be very exciting to see in what
Ghosts.
way. Yeah, it's going to be very fun to see in what way he messes this one up.
100%. But yeah, I mean, the NFL is it's always fun this time of year because, unless your team is the Philadelphia Eagles and they're, 12-1, sitting pretty at the top of their division, sitting top of the conference, you're biting your fingernails a bit each and every Sunday, depending on who your team is and, figuring some things out there. And right now, I mean, in terms of the AFC, it's going through Buffalo again because Buffalo and Chiefs are tied, but the Bills have that tiebreaker. So right now the AFC runs through Buffalo, and they seem to be out of the Odell Beckham Jr. conversation as well because they somehow convinced Cole Beasley to come out of retirement today and sign with them. So he's back in Buffalo. The Cowboys signed T.Y. Hilton. And, I mean, I at this point, I don't think OBJ is getting signed by anybody.
He's been talking too about how there's really no point in coming back for the regular season and all this, and it's like, brother, I like I said, we've said it so many times over the last few weeks. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I just can't believe what a spectacle this all was, and for what. A guy that maybe would be back for like the divisional round. Honestly, what is his actual timeline of being, playing, more than just a handful of snaps? This is a guy that's still working himself into shape and just came off another like significant injury. I don't see it
at all. So we'll see what happens with the Eagles this week against the Bears. Jalen Hurts versus Justin Fields should be fun with both of their legs on the ground. And something that's, good to get on the ground running is updating your fantasy smack talk with our friends at Trophy Smack. Guys, they've got the best fantasy football, fantasy sports trophies in the game. And it's not just trophies. It's belts, rings. They've got metal wall art now. They've got loser trophies for your league. Matt, I don't know how you fared in your fantasy football league this year, but I did miss the playoffs this year. but I am guaranteed the 3rd overall pick once again in my keeper league, so that's nice. But I am thriving in fantasy hockey again, which is great. But how's the fantasy experience been for you? Are you headed to the playoffs?
I am in my significant others league. I'm the top seed, got the bye. No worries this week. I made the unfortunate choice at the beginning of the year to kind of double up on Lamar Jackson in both my money leagues because, like, I love this guy. The first 3 weeks, I was like, I'm a genius. I have fantasy football figured out. It's been a struggle since, and now he's injured. And then my other league, I did make the playoffs as well. I'm actually playing Dylan this weekend, which is exciting. But yeah, scrambling a little bit to find to find some quarterback replacements this week. But yeah, in the playoffs in both of them, which is exciting. It's fun to care about. Sarah also made the playoffs. She rebounded. You know how someone's always like, I have the worst luck in fantasy football, whatever. She actually did. She actually legitimately, I think out of 14 weeks, played someone who had their highest total of the year. 9 of those weeks, she had by far the most points scored and points scored against, and her points scored was on par with someone who won 8 or 9 games in our league last year, and she won 3. So shout out to her. She grinded away this year. She hit the books over the summer, and she drafted well.
There we go. Yeah, I'm ready for draft season already. August, right around the corner, as they say. But make sure you guys
the
go
Howie
to
binocular.
Yeah, I'm out here scouting talent. These rookie. I'm looking for talent across the board. But you guys can go to trophysmack.com/underground and update your fantasy smack talk today. That's trophysmack.com/underground. trophysmack.com/underground. Upgrade your fantasy smack talk. Matt, we unfortunately will not have an Avenger returning to the Phillies rotation in 2023. Noah Syndergaard, right before we started recording, signed a 1-year, $13 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers, so he's going back to L.A. Unfortunate. Obviously, the Phillies have signed Taijuan Walker. I don't know if they've made that official yet. That's the last thing I've been waiting for from that flurry of Phillies free agency moves. They did make the Matt Strahm signing official, but I haven't seen anything about Taijuan Walker. I know a few moves have taken a while. They just recently, I think yesterday, the Rays announced Zach Eflin officially, so the Phillies were able to put their highlight montage video for Zach Eflin out, which was very emotional for the sickos like myself who have been following along with Zach Eflin since he was traded here for Jimmy Rollins back in 2014. He was one of the guys, and it was fun to finally see him crack into the postseason this year, but happy for him to go get paid and go pitch in, his home state. But Syndergaard leaving was a bummer because I felt like if the Phillies were going to deploy that 6-man rotation we've talked about, he would have been a perfect fit for that number 5 spot. But he's going to L.A. I still feel pretty okay about the Phillies rotation right now, whether it is Andrew Painter or insert pitcher number 5, whoever it may be here. And I mean, the baseball trade market still hasn't opened either. I think it'll start to get going now that last night the San Francisco Giants signed Carlos Correa to an absurd contract. Can't wait for Giants fans to just be like, yeah, what he did in Houston, it was just a misunderstanding of the rules. He's fine. He's great. He gets a 13-year, $350 million contract, full no-trade clause, no opt-outs from the San Francisco Giants. He's the only guy they have, though, so I'm still not too worried about the Giants right now. But I think now that he's off the board, we'll start to see trades go through. Obviously, we saw Sean Murphy get traded yesterday to the Braves, which it's how many catchers do the Braves need? But I think that might be where the Phillies explore a fifth starter option is through a minor type of trade.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to happen now. Of course, this is something you can address in season, which they did last year as well. And there were, if we can remember the trade deadline, feels like forever ago, but there were quite a few arms available at the deadline to acquire. Now, obviously, there's some costs associated with that, but yeah, I think where they're at is okay. I don't love, not in love with it, but I also think it's probably better than where we were last year, right? Which is a good spot to be in. And Eflin ultimately didn't give you enough this year to really. I wish him luck, but this was not a guy that was super consistent in his time with the Phillies, and health was definitely a concern. Missed a lot of time this year as well. And once he came back, he had some good moments, but again, was not a huge impact player, I wouldn't say, for the Phillies for most of this past year. So you're looking, at the youth side, if you're looking at some of these guys coming up, I'm really looking forward to that because it's not often you get hype like that this early. Because I mean, this is not even the first time we're hearing about some of these young guys maybe cracking the rotation at the start of the year. Feels like we've been hearing about this since like August of this year. So that to me is a good sign. Like sometimes we have an ability to overhype things, and this could definitely be one of those situations. But I do also think like when you're getting that genuine buzz that early on, and it seems like a real possibility. Like Alec Boehm, right? Was not someone necessarily that up until spring training it felt like, oh, he might make the roster. Like this might be a guy that we see immediately. And look how he's turned out, right? Like he's established himself as a starter. Like if we have that same level here, that's a great position to find yourself in.
Yeah, same with Bryson Stott. Like obviously he got sent down when Didi was still here, but he's back up
Bryson
and
Stott
running.
was like one of our best playoff performers outside of
Yeah.
like Bryce. Like he was.
And I mean, to get Bryson Stott where the Phillies did in the draft too, like he was obviously he was a top of the draft pick, like he was the 13th overall pick when he was drafted. But I think if you redid that draft now and looking at what Bryson Stott's done in his short, tenure in the majors, like people probably would have taken Bryson Stott much earlier than 13. So the fact that he fell to the Phillies there is just a godsend in and of itself. I'm looking at the free agent pitchers that are still out there, right, Matt? That are still out there right now. I mean, there's still some guys that I wouldn't hate if the Phillies, went and pulled the trigger on, especially since it's just money and it's not, giving up guys to go and get guys, which I think is a lot of the offseason chatter right now is teams would much rather just give guys money than have to give up prospects to get guys. Obviously, the big fish in the sea is still out there in Carlos Rodon. Who knows where he's going to end up? I sent you that screenshot. His wife liked that Trey Turner signed with the Phillies, so maybe there's still hope. I doubt it. Seems like there's a lot of buzz around the Yankees with him. I don't see that either. I just don't understand that match there. But Nate Eovaldi, still a free agent. There's, I think, familiarity there with Dombrowski's time in Boston. I think they were there at the same time. There's almost 40-year-old Zach Greinke, who's still out there. Mike Minor, Corey Kluber, Wade Miley, Michael Wacha. Jordan Lyles is an interesting one, too. Was with the Orioles last year. He's 32. Spotrac is putting his market value at like $9.8 million, 9.9. I wouldn't hate Jordan Lyles on like a 1-year type of prove-it deal with the Phillies to kind of reestablish himself out there, especially after, being with the Orioles last year. Kind of a weird season for them, too. But Jordan Lyles is a name that I'm surprised he hasn't signed a big contract yet to go pitch for, a team that's trying to push their way into being a contender or, a contender looking to add to their rotation.
Yeah, Lyles is good. I like Michael Wacha a lot. He's coming off a really strong year with Boston. I would actually be a little interested in him. He's only 30, as well. Like you could definitely sell yourself on him having, a few like really productive years left. I don't know what his cost is. I can't imagine it being too much. I know he was making not a significant amount of money last year, so I would actually be like kicking the tires on him personally. Like Eovaldi, certainly too. You could maybe both. Let's just like piece together 2 Red Sox pitchers and hope they stay healthy for a whole year, right? But Michael Wacha is a name actually that I would be kind of interested in.
Yeah, Spotrac has Wacha's market value at just under $12 million, which I don't think is that terrible.
That's doable for the Phillies right now. I think I think that's a totally doable number. So yeah, I'd be hitting up Michael Wacha.
Yeah, and I mean, if they want to go and get one of these guys, and Wacha, same representation as Trey Turner, he's a CAA guy, and I mean, last year Wacha's contract was 1 year, $7 million with the Red Sox, and like you said, he had a really solid bounce back year with the Red Sox in 2022, and he's kind of bounced around since leaving the Cardinals. He's with the Mets in 2020, he's with the Rays in 2021, and you know the story. If the Rays are taking a chance on you, they see something. So I think Michael Wacha might be, quote unquote, as the kids say, back. I wouldn't hate that. I also am just looking at it because I think from what I saw from Destiny Legardo after they signed Matt Strahm, I think the Phillies are like just under $16 million away from hitting that second luxury tax threshold, which, I mean, at this point, like, the Phillies have proven they are willing to spend. They're willing to, go into that deep end to win. And I think John Middleton getting that taste of the World Series last year is like, all right, let's just do whatever it takes to get back there and actually win that trophy. But I don't know if they're saving that, just under 16 million for the trade deadline, like we've talked about too, where it's like, hey, we could go and acquire somebody, pretty big at the deadline that might be off to a strong first half of the season and have that extra money to throw around and, play around with the luxury tax a little bit in season.
Yeah, this is why Dave Dombrowski gets paid the big dollars to reflect on these decisions, right? Because there's no like one right answer, right? Obviously, like free agency is a bit of a gamble because you don't know what was good about their situation in their previous stop and how replicable that is. And was that just a fluke, flash in the pan, whatever? And then, regular season, there's obviously some risk too in that you're having to give up not just money, but also some sort of, capital, some sort of asset to the team to acquire this player. And obviously, if someone just has maybe a stronger start to the season and a poorer second half of the year, you're stuck with that poorer second. There's no right or wrong way. I don't think to maybe this approach, but I do think the Phillies in years past have they've made like a few big moves, right? Like we've gotten again our template of the last few years. We had our big eyeball scrounging type of signing, right? And then like a projected starter, and then like a few relief pitchers, and that's it, and then we just roll into the season with that. So I almost wouldn't be shocked either if this is maybe just where the Phillies settle and find their level at. Because already they have the third or fourth highest payroll in baseball. It's not exactly,
And I mean, nobody's going to touch the Mets payroll because of where they've hit, and plus the taxes now. I think the Mets payroll this year that will ultimately result in them losing the wild card round again is at $400 million after they signed Senga, and then, they've signed a couple other guys as well. Luckily, they didn't sign Correa because that would have been devastating. Just in terms of that lineup. But as we all know, the Mets are the Mets, and they're going to metify anything they possibly can. Also, let's not forget, too, Phillies fans, because I genuinely forgot because he wasn't really pitching in the postseason. Bailey Falter was really good down the stretch for the Phillies.
Yeah. He was kind of a highlight of that bottom stretch, and someone you can come back for next year and hope for some improvement out of. So I think that factors in it too. Again, we want these young guys to come up and have their moments. They can't do that if you're signing, big free agents, 2 or 3 at a time, right? Like you have to find the right balance between when you're building a roster in any sport, between getting those big free agents, those big trade acquisitions, while also trusting, your youth development and your coaches to develop those young players and to grow. Because the Phillies have some players in key areas that can really grow and develop this year. Look at the strides that Alec Bohm made this past season, and what a different figure he was from May of this year to now, right? Like how differently we think about him. There were calls about him going back down to the minors, early last season, and I don't know that those were even unfounded. He looked bad, so it can just change so much. The course of the season, it's such a long season, and you kind of do have to put some faith too that these young guys can develop and grow.
I do think they should still kind of explore potentially one more bullpen arm. I'm looking at their 40-man roster just for the bullpen right now. Phillies bullpen looks like this. It's Jose Alvarado, Andrew Bellotti, Connor Brogdon, another guy who, early in the season looked horrific, and then down the stretch and in the postseason, for the most part, was really, really solid out of the bullpen. Sam Coonrod should be back this year, too, coming off of injury. He's still in the minors, but he should be back in this bullpen, which would help if he bounces back because he's another hard-throwing right-hander. Sir Anthony Dominguez, James MacArthur is on the 40-man. Francisco Morales is on the 40-man. Nick Nelson is still on this roster. Um, Michael Plasemeyer still on the roster. Christopher Sanchez, Matt Strom, and that's really your bullpen right now. I think you still need to go and get one more piece to kind of like. I think Strom's gonna, in theory, be the seventh inning guy that leads to Alvarado, that leads to Sir Anthony Dominguez. But I think you need one more guy to go out there and kind of be the right-handed counterpart to Matt Strom. But I think the bullpen will come together at some point, and there's still plenty of minor league talent on this team that could get added to the bullpen as well. Matt Strom's number official on the depth chart, Matt. I'm going to get your initial reaction here. It's a pretty interesting number to dish out, but they've got Matt Strom wearing number 25. Jim
Okay.
Tomei, big shoes.
Yeah, we'll take it.
I like it. So that's the Phillies bullpen right now, and I mean, who knows? Once the trade markets open up, things could even spiral even more with people on the move. But Phillies offseason has been fantastic. This baseball offseason has just been so much fun. Like, the amount of moves that have been made feels like more than ever. And with it happening so quickly and so much happening at the winter meetings, it's just been enjoyable to have like that year-round baseball feel again.
Yeah. It's I still think they should make it like NBA where everything opens up on like December 1st, and you just sort of have like those first few days are just a flurry of signings and kind of makes it that year-round thing. But I will say I think this year especially, and it helps too that you have these big free agents, and every year it feels like someone's kind of outdoing the previous year's price tag, and that's kind of adds a different level to it as well.
Yeah, that would be pretty ideal, I think, across the board for just like fans and then teams as a whole. Like, day one of free agency just be day one of the winter meetings.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense because especially now, everybody's back in person for the winter meetings and everybody's all in one place, so it makes it that much more fun. But from the Phillies to the hardwood, and it's brought to you by our friends at Kenwood Beer. Go to kenwoodbeer.com, or now, Matt, I don't know if you saw this, now available at the Wells Fargo Center, Big Kenny's available at the Farg. So when you're going to watch the Sixers, the Flyers, Villanova basketball, the Philadelphia Wings, you can grab yourself a Kenwood Beer at the Wells Fargo Center. You can use the new and improved Kenny tracker at kenwoodbeer.com to see who's got Kenny's on tap in the Philadelphia area. You got to be 21 or older to do so, and of course, please drink responsibly. Sixers actually win a game convincingly, look good. Joel Embiid just continues to be Joel Embiid. James Harden looked very, very good last night. Put up a ton of stats in typical James Harden fashion that I think a lot of Sixers fans want to see from him now, coming back from the injury. Tobias Harris has been on a nice little stretch here as well, producing for this team, and they scored 80 first half points against the Kings, who have had a solid start to this season so far. They're kind of everybody's like darling team that they want to see perform well. But a good win for the Sixers to kind of hopefully steer this ship in the right direction. But any thoughts now that we're like getting closer to that actual mark of when NBA season starts, being Christmas Day?
I've been on a Sixers strike. I still think this team, frankly, doesn't deserve a lot of people's attention for a lot of reasons. The main thing, though, is that Doc Rivers sucks. The players don't like him. If you listen to these guys talk post-game especially, you hear like the remarks. If you watch like the body language around him, he's clearly someone that just doesn't have the respect anymore. And, listen, maybe they get through this season, everyone gets healthy, which, has been a legitimate part of this like first quarter of the year for the Sixers has been a lot of injuries and guys just missing, significant amount of time. Like that's obviously tough to handle for any coach. It'd be tough for a competent coach to handle. Then you throw in the fact that Doc Rivers just seems clueless. There's been a few times like he has talked about things that the Sixers have worked on, and then the players like we have not worked on that at all. It's just it's bizarre. I I'm so disengaged with the team because of that, because it's so hard to root for that guy and know that the Sixers' success is his success. And I don't see this season going anywhere but another like first or second round exit because I just have no faith in Doc Rivers as a coach. And it's hard for me to buy in, with the Sixers at this point. That said, Embiid has looked good this year. I think he's taken like another step in just sort of his decision making, which is something I think a lot of people always wanted out of him. And I am looking forward to seeing him and Harden healthy, hopefully, for the rest of the season. And because we still have only seen so few games with him, Harden, Maxey, like we just have not gotten a lot of minutes with those three. And you want to see that, realized in an actual setting, and get to see them play together. So I am looking forward to that.
It would be very on brand just for this Sixers, like this iteration of the Sixers, for Embiid to win the MVP in a season like this.
Yeah, I don't see it just because the Sixers aren't having. I mean, they could turn it around, but I do reflect on the fact too that the Celtics this time last year, right, just were not in a good place at all, and end up making a run to the finals and end up finishing as one of the top seeds in the East. So, the book is not closed on this year, but again, just when you have Doc Rivers, I have such little faith in this team. I don't think they should have hired him to begin with, and then I think you've had two very fireable postseason exits so far under his belt that I don't get it. I don't get why he's around.
Yeah, I mean, he brings the morale of this team not only for, like you mentioned, with the players and everything, but just fan interest as a whole. It's like everybody knows this team is not going to like take another leap forward until Doc Rivers is gone. He's holding this team back, and I just wish the Sixers front office like kind of looked at what happened to the Phillies, and maybe they will. Maybe this is took the Phillies about 3 months to fire Joe Girardi. Who knows what happens, post Christmas and everything, but it would be nice if they took a page out of the Phillies book and was like, hey, our coach fucking sucks. Let's fire him, bring in, the young gun that's right next to him on the bench, whether it's, Sam Cassell or somebody on this staff that it seems like the players have respect for, Sam Cassell being one of them. And let's see if that turns things around and motivates these guys even more to say, hey, like, nobody's really safe here, and, you got to kind of earn your keep, and Doc Rivers has just been holding this team back since he got here, and it's not going to change, overnight.
I mean, I know Ime Udoka is obviously not revered in the same way. Sixers let him walk out the door, right? Now, obviously, whatever he did with the Celtics, whatever. But as a coach, he's a very good coach. Like the Sixers have had these guys, as part of their staff and have let them go. And, I reflect too, like it was between Tyronn Lue or Doc. And Ty Lue was like a big candidate. It was like, bring me Ty Lue. And I still like, I just think that was such a crossroads moment. And, I know Daryl Morey seems to have some type of relationship with Doc Rivers. I personally don't get it at all. I think it's actually one of the biggest blind spots for me for Daryl Morey is this like this love that he has for Doc Rivers. The dude has not been a good coach for a decade now. He's really feasting like everyone else from that '08 Celtics team off of that title, and I don't understand it. It is just such a sunk cost on this team, Doc Rivers.
Yeah, 100%. And you just look at the in-game moves that Doc Rivers makes for this team just speaks volumes of just like how incompetent he is. You have B-Ball Paul on this team who has developed quite well, and that's, a rare case for the Sixers who just lack developing talent. Go watch Isaiah Joe in Oklahoma City right now. He's balling out for a team that is going nowhere. And, Charles Bassey setting NBA records for the San Antonio Spurs whenever he gets playing time. So, I mean, Doc just refusing to play young talent, holding the development of young guys back on this team over the last couple of seasons has just been like organizational malpractice. And, I retweeted one of my tweets from last year. I said, it's no coincidence that the Sixers have kind of been on this demise trail since their jersey patch sponsor became a money laundering scheme. And wanted to talk about that as well with you because we talk about just the stupidity of crypto. The the king of it all right now, SBF, getting arrested in the Bahamas, Matt.
God bless him. Yeah, listen, we warned you.
Told you.
Don't put your money in it. I wonder what the Super Bowl commercials this year are going to look like because half of them were dumb crypto ads last year. So got some space loaded up there. At least.
I don't think we'll get a bouncing QR code this year.
Thank Christ. Remember that was the most genius thing that's ever been done on television ever.
Ugh.
So stupid.
The greatest Super Bowl commercial ever is a Windows 97 screensaver.
It's so clever. You just don't get it. It's like the most clever thing that's ever been done, actually.
It's unbelievable. But as we move forward here, I wanted to get your thoughts too. We talked about it a little bit on Monday's episode, but the Philadelphia Union announced they are retiring what I think is the best kit in all of MLS and one of the best in MLS history. The baby blue lightning bolt kit is going away. I think it's unfortunate. Should be one of those that stays in the rotation, I think, forever, just because of how nice and clean it looks and just how well it represents the team and kind of just the branding of the Union. But your thoughts on the Union retiring that bad boy?
I love that kit. Does hurt because it's when you lose the final in, but yeah, it had some good memories attached to it as well. It was a good one, and I'm just hopeful that we get something of similar excitement back in return. I like the cool and clean ones, but I do like get a little eccentric with it. So I hope that the next one that they replace it with has that same kind of style where they take a little liberty.
Do you think it's the best one the Union have ever had?
I think it's like I'm like partial to some of the early season, like really like simple like blue and gold like stripes. I think those are just really clean looking and nice. I think it's certainly like probably the one I'd most want to just like wear out, but it all depends on I think your preference. It's certainly I think sort of the coolest one. I think it has like the most just like eye catching value, and I think it's the one I think would kind of promote the most discussion if you walked into a room with it. But yeah, it's definitely up there, like an all timer for the Union so far.
It is a bummer that they didn't end up winning the MLS Cup in those, because that would have just been all time to be like, yeah, that's the kit that we won the championship in. Top ends will be coming up after this, but wanted to get some thoughts on the World Cup as well. It's brought to you by our friends at Bino Board. Guys, Bino is the next big tabletop game for your man cave, your she shed, your tailgates, wherever you may be. You guys should have a Bino board. It's going to start a conversation and get the people going. Think paper football meets foosball. You've got Bino. So go to binoboard.com. You guys can use code BINOUSP for 10% off any order. That includes custom boards they already have made, officially licensed Arsenal and Liverpool boards, any accessories for your boards, you name it. Our code works. It's BINOUSP for 10% off at binoboard.com. World Cup over the last couple of days, Matt, has been in the public eye, I think, for more reasons than what we would have hoped for. Obviously, Grant Wall's passing was very unfortunate. Came out today that apparently there was like an undetected aneurysm that caused his death. That came from his wife. So very unfortunate that we lost such a talented and just tapped in journalist across the board. Obviously, he's the one that dubbed LeBron James the chosen one. But that was very unfortunate, and to finally kind of see what exactly happened. I know he was talking on his podcast that he was feeling like he had bronchitis or something. Then a couple days later, he just collapses in the press box during Argentina's semifinal game. So a lot of just thoughts and good vibes to his family and everything. Just an unfortunate loss for American soccer, because like even people who didn't particularly follow soccer as a whole, you kind of knew who Grant Wall was.
Yeah, he was definitely one of the faces of U.S. soccer. Someone that, like, for me growing up, like, soccer's obviously big now, but it was a little bit harder to find coverage on the sport. And he was like really a trailblazer in that regard. So a big miss, just in terms of the industry, and I think what he's done for the sport here. And I think it's even more sad and unfortunate because obviously the World Cup is gonna be hosted in the U.S., Canada, Mexico in 2026, and you just think it's not going to feel the same without him there for that. So yeah, it's a huge loss, and such a tragedy because he was so young as well, and it's just so sudden. Um, as far as the games go, though, it's been exciting. We have a fantastic final lined up for us: France versus Argentina. These two teams played in the knockout stages in 2018, and it was a great game, 4-3, one of the best games of the knockout stages from that tournament. So I'm looking forward to it. It has just about every storyline you can imagine all wrapped up into it. So it's provided, at least on the field, a lot of good moments. And Morocco, obviously, first African team to make it to the semifinals. That was fantastic. It's just a great story all around there. And it's going to be a really fun weekend here, wrapping up the tournament, and then we're just right back to the domestic leagues.
Yeah, it is. It blew my mind when I saw that headline as soon as Morocco got their opportunity to advance to that game. That they were the first African nation to advance to the semifinal ever. Like, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, they're just a handful of African teams that didn't even made it to the quarterfinals. It's just they have not had there was actually a big strike and collective, and this is part of the reason that there's so much solidarity, especially in football terms, with a lot of African nations. They actually collectively held out and called for changes, for more opportunities for African teams to get bids to the World Cup. This is in the 80s, and since then, though, there's been a big push to have these teams more integrated. And part of the there's some debate about the next World Cup is going to have 48 teams rather than 32. You're going to expand the field by a lot. It's a significant amount of teams being added to the competition, but African teams are going to get a lot more. As it is, qualifying from Africa is very challenging. There's always good teams that get left at home just because, there are a lot of quality teams there, and it just gets very tight, and cutthroat, honestly. You do get just a few big teams. Like Nigeria wasn't at this World Cup, and they're just a team perennially that is very good. A team like Egypt, right, too, wasn't there. So yeah, it's a challenge, but African teams, especially over the last, I would say 14, 15 years, have really developed. And what you're seeing now too is, I think, a big push for a lot of former players that have now had that experience as a player, going to the World Cup and becoming more established as professionals, now also going through and becoming more established as coaches, going through more professional programs. I think the coaching aspect can't be understated, how important I think that's been for a lot of these African teams. And they're hiring managers too from their own countries. That's been a debate too with England, is about, should England hire someone from outside of England? A lot of national teams only hire from within, from someone from their own nationality. It's not as common, right, for it to be the other way around. So, it's a big change. And, we've Senegal felt like the team that maybe could have done that this year or in 2018, because they have a ton of talent. And it is cool to finally see that wall being broken down. But, I think there's still definitely work to be done, and, some growth to be done. But it's a positive, I think, thing that this World Cup, I think, had more parity than I can remember previous World Cups having. I think just now, the game has gone so global, and I think the information and the tactics are so available to everyone everywhere, that you are seeing a much more level playing ground, I think, between teams. You're really not having these big moments of just teams just absolutely walloping on someone that is just so tactically below the bar.
100%. And it's going to be an electric Sunday with the World Cup final at 9 a.m., leading right into another NFL Sunday. But we go from the pitch to the island, Matt, and it's brought to you by our friends at Tomahawk Shades, and for good reason. Because just this week, Tomahawk Shades, our loyal partners since 2020, the best small batch eyewear in the game, has partnered with one of our favorite survivors of all time, Tyson Apostle, now a Tomahawk Shades ambassador with his pickleball enthusiasm, if you will. He's big in the pickleball game, and he's partnered with Tomahawk Shades, and it's pretty cool that Tyson Apostle is now kind of part of our branding family, if you will. Tomahawk Shades, they've got the best sunglasses, blue light glasses, and now the ski goggles back in stock. We got to let Dom know about that as he gets ready for powder season. They got the ski goggles for your snowing endeavors. You guys can go to tomahawkshades.com and use code USP for 25% off your order. And right now they're doing 7 days of Tomahawk on their website each and every day, something new for very affordable. I claimed free mystery pair of sunglasses yesterday. You can do the same thing each and every day this week at tomahawkshades.com. Use code USP for 25% off your order. And I think it's only fair that Tomahawk's got to try to link us up with Tyson now. And he's somebody we've talked about since we started, doing Survivor on this show as well, that we wanted Tyson on the pod. So, Tyson, here's the call out. Come on the show, man. We would love to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Survivor's getting wild, man. We're down to the very nitty gritty now of it all. So I'm looking forward to it.
Season 43 finale tonight. If you're watching this live, Cody gets voted out in quite a blindside last week, and the final five, unpredictable as ever, with Owen, Cassidy, Carla, Gabler, and Jesse. The fact that Gabler made it to the final five is incredible. Good for him, especially with just how it was early on for him, not feeling too well, and it being hard for him to keep his body nourished. Good for Gabler to get to the final five, but Jesse making that move to vote Cody out at Tribal Council last week, I think was a huge power move, and something that we really haven't seen this season as a whole, in terms of just like that spontaneous type of move to really establish yourself in a game-winning type of move that he made. And I think right now, going into tonight without kind of knowing who's going to be in that final three, if you had to make me guess, I think I finally have a couple guesses of who could end up winning this whole thing, and it's Jesse and Carla.
Yeah, I think those two, have a lot of in common as well, and I think they've worked together a lot. Although I could see some of the flipping. Carla was kind of in people's crosshairs last week, and now she, we'll see where she ends up. Big move by Jesse, obviously, to move on from Cody, and I think is probably right though. I think he was making some sense. I do wonder though, because Gabler already tagged them as a pair and said that they're too powerful if he still has the eyes on Jesse. So there's a lot, I think, to be figured out. No one's just a little bit of a wild card. He's a hard man to kind of pin down on where he is, and Cassidy as well. I think has the capacity to make a strong case at the final three too. She can make some big moves here down at the end. So, people I think got a lot of respect for Cassidy as well. I can remember a few people that got voted out already really wanted her gone and said, every time that they vote out one of her partners or whatever, she finds a new person to connect. She's adapted really well in this game. I think that's been a real strength of hers. So everyone at this point, I think, has a foundation from which they can win, the $1 million. So.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at who's on the jury right now and who's left in the final five, we talk about this a ton every season. I think there's a lot of people from season 43 that if they, started doing, this turbo style of Survivor with just the 24 days, there's a lot of people from this cast that I think could be coming back for an all-star type season or a redemption type of season as well.
I mean, you could make a great, I think, return season based off the last three. I think, you could honestly probably find enough people that I would actually genuinely be interested in. So, yeah, it's been good casting.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess since it is the finale, we here's the Survivor clip for everybody. Matt, if you had to peg your winner for 43, who do you think ends up, with that big check?
I'm gonna go with this, and it's a little bit of wish casting because I've liked this person for the last few weeks, and I would like to see them win. I'm going with Carla. I think she's played a strong game to this point. I like the way she plays. She's smart, um, not to be underestimated, and I think stands a good chance of convincing a jury. So I'm going to attach my horses to Carla.
I think Carla has a really strong shot, and just to be contrarian, I'm gonna say Jesse, just because that move that he made, it seemed like the jury was like blown away and like knew that he was the one making the move. So I think that was high praises for him when it comes down to if he does get to the final three, that'll be in the backs of the minds of many of those jury members. And then who do you think wins the Sia award?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I actually don't know that I've really thought about
I
who.
don't think we've
I
predicted
could see
this.
I could see Jesse maybe getting the C award. Just given like his background and where he's at now in life, I could see that being a thing. Um, yeah, that's tough. I'm not totally sure.
I could kind of see Cassidy winning the Sia award, just because, like you said, she's been able to adapt, and I feel like that's something that like would stick out to Sia when she's picking that award. So I could see Cassidy winning. I could also see Carla winning it if she doesn't end up winning the whole thing. I could see Carla winning the Sia award as well. That's something that we'll have to keep in our minds for season 44 preseason Sia award prediction, and then as the season goes on, we'll figure it all out because season 44 right around the corner, March 1st is when 44 kicks off, which will be fantastic. That it's right around the corner pretty much.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So that is Survivor 43. We'll recap the finale next week, but make sure you guys are following at Buffs and Snuffs on Twitter, and follow Underground Sports on Twitter, all the socials, at Underground PHI, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.com/Underground Sports PHI, Twitch.tv/Underground Sports PHI. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Leave a 5-star review. It really helps the show continue to grow. And make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel as well. YouTube.com/at Underground Sports Philadelphia. Subscribe. End of year goal. We've had to temper the expectations just a little bit, but you can still prove us wrong. Trying to get to 350 by the end of the year. We're at 328. I think it's super attainable. So be a friend, tell a friend. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Smash that like button. Ring the bell icon. Comment down below your thoughts on everything we've talked about on this episode. And big thank you to our sponsors who make this show happen. Main Auto LLC, Security 21 Security Systems, Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated, and the Dental Wellness Center of Vineland. Get your merch as well. phiapparel.co, code underground for 10% off any and all merch orders. It's the easiest way to support us and help us continue doing our thing here at Underground Sports Philadelphia. But this has been episode number 490 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. For Matt, I'm KB. Stick around if you're watching live. Top Bins coming up next, and we will catch you guys next time. Peace.